Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
The just released first of the year college football playoff rankings are out, and no surprise at the top. Alabama is the #1 team. Clemson and Michigan are number 2 and 3, but a little bit of a surprise. SEC West member A&M with a loss comes in ahead of unbeaten Pac-12 school Washington. Wow. Ohio State at 6. So the Huskies and the Buckeyes, the first two out. And look at this. Louisville, Wisconsin 7 and 8. Auburn is number 9. What a turnaround for the Tigers. And Nebraska checks in at number 10. Of note, Alabama's opponent this Saturday, LSU, is ranked 13th, meaning that 4 of the top 13 are from the SEC West. And if you're looking for an SEC team from the East, well, you got to look further down. It's just that big a gap in the two divisions. And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. And tonight, once again, Pepsi Max Taste, 0 sugar. As I say every week, that's a pretty good combination for me. I'm down a few pounds, and I think Pepsi Max has got a lot to do with it.
Probably does.
Because I can get all the flavor, but I don't have to get the calories. Pick up some Pepsi products the next time you're at your local grocery store from Buffalo Rock. Well, Rodney, it was a nice weekend off for Alabama, I think, for the team, the coaches, and the fans. The Crimson Tide, though, was back on the practice field yesterday, and one of the biggest challenges facing the team this week is replacing Eddie Jackson as safety. Now, Coach Saban said Minkah Fitzpatrick will likely see some time there, and the sophomore defensive back said he's ready for the test.
You got to make a little bit more calls, and you got to be a little bit more disciplined at that position. And I think that's probably going to be the main changes and the main role shift for me. You always got to do what's best for the team, and that's what coach thinks is best for the team right now. And it's just another challenge that I have to accept. And I see it as an opportunity to kind of show my versatility as an athlete.
Now, Rod, the great news here is that this is a guy who gets it, and much like Eddie Jackson, you know, he's a corner by trade, so you move him to safety. He's got great coverage skills. He's smart. He's disciplined. You know, losing Eddie Jackson, there's no way around it. That's a setback. But Minkah Fitzpatrick is a really good football player.
It is. But at the same time, when you lose Minkah at the star position, that means you're going to play someone that hasn't really gotten much experience or hasn't played much this season, possibly Tony Brown coming off that suspension. Certainly Tony's a very talented player. He did a great job last year in the Mississippi State game, as you remember, when Minkah went down with an injury, and Tony filled in, almost had a couple of picks in that game. So Tony's got a ton of ability if he happens to be at the star position and Minkah's at the safety spot. But hey, Minkah's a great athlete. Gary, the thing about him is he's a lot like Eddie Jackson in that he's kind of like a center fielder type player. He's a guy that really understands the offense in terms of, you know, where receivers go and routes they run. He kind of understands that, knows how to read the quarterback's eyes.
Yeah, you know, with Eddie Jackson, you had a guy that was just an outstanding football player and could do a lot of different things for you, Rodney. And another hole left by Jackson's absence is going to be on special teams, specifically punt catching and punt returning, where he had become a fixture. Yesterday, Coach Saban said Xavier Marks and Trayvon Diggs will probably get their opportunities to return punts in Saturday's game against LSU. He's hoping the young players will be smart in that role.
The judgment of the guy back there, when to field the ball, when not to field it, when to play it on a hop, you know, when to get away from it. I think that's really critical when you're playing against this kind of team.
All right, Rod, early in the season, Eddie Jackson wasn't returning punts. Diggs got his shot. Marks had a punt return for a touchdown, I think, against Western Kentucky. Both of those guys have played back there, but Eddie Jackson was doing a tremendous job, not just returning the punts, but catching the ball in traffic, securing the football. That's where it starts. The first thing to do is, like Tommy Wilcox always told me, Coach Bryant didn't say returning punts, he said catching punts. Mm-hmm. You're going to be catching punts today because the first thing is to catch and secure the football.
It is. And, you know, Gary, Calvin Ridley also worked some back there. In fact, he was the early guy in terms of the first guy that was returning punts this year before they kind of shuffled and found Eddie Jackson and the things that he did. But, you know, when you move forward, The question is, are they going to go with one of those two guys, Xavier Marks or Trayvon Diggs, guys that have kind of had some experience, or could we see someone else? Could we see a freshman like Shy Carter, who is a tremendous athlete and has the ability to return a punt? Maybe a guy like that that's a new guy. But, you know, generally speaking, Nick Saban goes with the guy that has a little bit of experience.
That's Marks. It was Kent State, obviously, that he had the touchdown return against. You just saw it. And here's Diggs, who has a lot of talent. But the good news is, Rodney, for the secondary and for the special teams, they had an extra week to work on this. Yeah. So it's not just one game and then you're right back into action. They had a 2-week time and still working on it. So I think they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that Alabama's concerned about, not just special teams, but the challenge that facing LSU presents is Leonard Fournette. Now, last year, we know the Crimson Tide defense stifled Fournette for just 31 yards on 19 carries, and many of those yards came after that late fumble by Derrick Henry. He got, I think, 13 or 14 on one carry. But he enters this weekend's game after racking up nearly 300 rushing yards against Ole Miss, 280-plus an LSU record. He's well rested, having sat out 3 games earlier this season. He's healthy, and LSU head coach Ed Orgeron is looking for a different Leonard Fournette in this 2016 matchup against the Crimson Tide.
We're going to do some things with Leonard that he's able to do. I think that this is whatever happened last year is the past. And we're going to have a great game plan for Leonard, but I will say this to you, that it's going to be very tough moving the football on this defense. They're one of the best defense I've ever seen.
Obviously, Rodney, it's a key for Alabama, again, to bottle up Leonard Fournette. He goes crazy, and LSU becomes a really, really dangerous football team.
Yeah, he does. And also, it's not just Leonard Fournette now. Darius Geis is an outstanding player. He's explosive. Gary, you know, maybe some of our younger viewers won't remember this, but this 1-2 punch that they have with Fournette, Darius Geis, reminds me of Bo Jackson, Brent Fullwood. You know, you have a guy that's really explosive and a bigger guy like Fournette, like Bo Jackson, than the guy that also is explosive and can make big plays like Darius Geis. So, I mean, these guys are both really good, obviously outstanding running backs, but I tell you, Geis is also a real threat as a receiver, and Fournette can be a real threat as a receiver. In fact, I expect them to throw the ball some to Fournette in this game.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference in this team is the offense. Since Coach Miles was relieved of his duties and Cam Cameron, the offensive coordinator, it's loosened them up. They're doing more things on offense. Defensively, they've been good the whole year. Let's talk about Etling, the quarterback. You know, he's not flashy. He doesn't have the athletic ability of Brandon Harris, but the guy, you know, does what he needs to do with that talent around him. That's manage the game, and he makes enough throws that you have to respect their passing game.
Well, that's the key. You really did not have to respect it much with Brandon Harris, who was a 50% maybe passer. And, you know, Etling's just made the throws. They're there. He's been steady. I think he's brought a calmness to this offense. Here you'll see him making a throw. This is typical of what he does. Now, look, all he really has to do is get the ball in these guys' hands. DJ Chark, Malachi Dupree, Trayvon Durrell. They're all outstanding players, big playmakers. So if you just get the ball out there to these guys, they're big, they're physical receivers, they're athletic, so they can do a lot of things in terms of making big plays.
Yeah, like Alabama, they've got playmakers on offense. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, the Tide loses a commitment because of academic requirements in the Southeastern Conference we'll discuss. Plus, Avery Johnson's second year unofficially begins this week. We'll discuss the changes on and off the court. And coming up, of course, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. There's the information on how you can get in touch with us, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us, TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can reach us on Twitter using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Avery Johnson is focused on turning the Alabama men's basketball team into a contender, and he's not just improving the Tide's roster. Coleman Coliseum, another facelift with custom-built transfer tubs, a new players' lounge, and a system that electronically tracks players in practice and measures their jumps. Same type stuff that football has, lateral movement and agility. I'm telling you what, man, if you don't have the facilities in this day and age, you just can't compete. And Alabama men's basketball looks like it is ready to compete, Rodney. Sounds a lot like another Alabama team. Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris with Rodney Orr. Rodney, Alabama exceeded expectations in Avery Johnson's first year. Now the bar is set a little bit higher. He has got some good recruits in. What do you think we can look forward to in year 2 as far as this Avery Johnson Alabama men's basketball squad?
Well, I tell you, Gary, I think there's going to be a lot of improvement because I thought last year I was really impressed watching them compete against some of these teams in the Southeastern Conference that I really felt were more athletic teams, more gifted teams. And Alabama took several of them down to the wire, had opportunities to win more games, just could not pull some of them out. I really thought the only team that pretty much controlled them, dominated them was Kentucky, but I mean, who didn't they really dominate? But, you know, and you look at what they've done, some of the additions, and of course, Dazon Ingram back from the injury, and some of the additions to the team that they've got this year. You know, I just think he's getting the roster closer and closer to where he wants it. And I think with recruiting, I think they've obviously got some good commitments, 3 really good commitments for this class. And I think there's a good chance they're going to get a couple of more. So, I mean, I think this thing really looks like it's headed in the right direction.
I do, too. And they're on a good track to, hopefully, the NCAA tournament. Well, back to football. Rodney, Alabama lost the commitment of junior college linebacker Gary Johnson this past weekend. He had committed to the Tide in March, but on Sunday, the Dodge City Community College star tweeted that he is opening his recruitment back up due to the SEC's academic requirements. Rodney, what are your thoughts on Johnson's announcement? I mean, you know, he had been committed for quite a while, but Alabama's done very well recruiting high school linebackers. So even though it's disappointment right now, this could really open up a spot for somebody else.
You know, Gary, he's a real playmaker at the linebacker spot. He's probably not as big as what Alabama normally has. He's only about 6'1", 215, 217, something like that. So he's really not as big as what Alabama generally uses at the linebacker spot. It's just his speed and his playmaking ability. And it really did not surprise me because a lot of times, most of the time, in fact, when you take a junior college player, at least Alabama has, not all the time, but most of the time, they want those guys to be ready to get here in January, go through spring practice. I don't see that with Gary Johnson. So this really isn't surprising. You made a good point about the high school linebackers. Alabama doing a good job recruiting those.
All right, coming up on Tider Insider TV, an update on the Crimson Tide volleyball squad, and we're welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information right there on your screen on how you can get in touch with us. Go ahead and call in now because the phone lines will fill up fast. It's LSU week for Alabama football. We'll return with more TITV right after this timeout. The Alabama volleyball team is going through a rough stretch, but looking to get back on track at Texas A&M on Thursday. The Tide has 6 losses in its last 8 games, in its last 8 matches, but still sits in the middle of the pack in the SEC. The Crimson Tide take on the Aggies on Thursday, and then they'll return home for a match against Arkansas on Sunday. And Rodney, let me correct something I said earlier. I want to give the SEC East a little bit of credit. They deserve it. I said 4 teams from the SEC West in the top 13. Florida actually checks in at number 11 in the playoff ranking. So the Gators are having a really good year, and they're in at number 11 from the East Division of the SEC. So that's 5 of the top 13 from the Southeastern Conference. All right, let's go to the phone lines. First up is David over in Anniston. Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, guys, I'm doing good tonight. It's good to be back on your program. I just want to tell you I'm saddened that we lost Eddie Jackson. That is a big loss. But I truly believe when the dust settles Saturday night that Leonard Fournette, guys, and Etling, all 3 is going to find out what an athletic defense we have. I love our defense. Believe it's going to carry us all the way. And I don't think Mr. Fournette's going to hit 100 yards Saturday night. What do you think?
Well, I think this, if he doesn't hit 100 yards, it'll be another great effort by the Alabama defense. And I'm with you on this Alabama defense. Rodney had a call this morning on my radio show about was last year's defense or this year's defense. If you had to pick one, which would you take? And, you know, with Robinson and Reed in the middle last year, that was a stout defense. But for this defense's ability to turn games by scoring touchdowns, I believe I'd take this year's unit.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong either way, certainly. And I like them both.
Yeah, and Alabama's defense will be tested. But I'm with you, David. I think they're special. All right, let's go over to West Blockton and talk to Trey. Trey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Very well.
Long time no call.
Yeah,
right?
good to hear from you, Trey.
Hey, as Jim Morris Sr. might rant in a post-game interview, playoff? We're talking about the playoff? But, you know, everybody, you know, anticipation built, and, you know, we now have the top 4. No surprise at the top, of course. I want to talk about A&M. That also didn't surprise me. I think if you compare, let's say, strength of schedule with Washington.
Right.
Washington's undefeated, of course, but we're talking about a very weak body of work. I know they're undefeated, but, you know, A&M's sitting there with 1 loss, and, of course, that loss came against the team that is viewed as being, I guess, head and shoulders above the field. So I think if they win out, I think if A&M wins out, as long as Alabama wins out, even though A&M in that scenario, will not even have played for the SEC title, I think they're in the Final Four.
Interesting point, Trey. I tell you, Rodney, it will be if that scenario played out. If A&M won the rest of their games and Washington finished undefeated, now I'm going to be honest with you, I think Washington would eventually jump A&M. But who knows? But there's so much football left. As Trey said really at the top of his call, they do this, I think, for a lot of ratings purposes and to stir interest, but a lot could change over the next few weeks.
Yeah, it really could. And, Trey's certainly very knowledgeable, but at the same time, I would be shocked if an undefeated Washington team was passed over by a team that had lost a game, did not win their division, did not win their conference, and then Washington were to win the Pac-12. I mean, that would really be a tough pick there.
All right. Keep it tuned here. More phone calls. Tighter Insider TV will return right after this. Wes Hart has the Crimson Tide soccer program certainly going in the right direction. Alabama fell 1-0 in double overtime last night in its match against Texas A&M in the first round of the SEC tournament at Orange Beach. But still, the Tide finished above 500 at 9-8-2, a 4-game improvement from last year. And like I said, the heartbreaking loss last night. Hart is now 14-20-4 in his 2 seasons in Alabama, but look out for this team in the future. All right, welcome back to TITV. Let's get right back to the phones. Rodney John has been holding in Bessemer. Hey, John, what's up, man?
What's going on, man?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I was trying to find out about Ronnie. The guy got his leg broke. Will he be back next year? And I'm trying to find out about recruiting later.
Okay. Well, Eddie Jackson will not be back next year. He's going to be fine, but he's going to go into the NFL draft, and he'll be playing in the National Football League next year. And as far as recruiting, that's pretty general. I can answer that one, Ronnie, and save you the trouble. It's going well. It's going well. Let's go to Coker and talk with Candy next up here on the phone lines. Candy, how are you?
I'm good. Has Najee Harris made an official visit to campus, and if not, when is he going to?
Well, the thought is, Candy, he was thought to be coming in for the Texas A&M game. That was kind of a late scheduled deal, and he did not make it. He had a game that ran late that night in California, so he's expected to come in probably for the Iron Bowl on November the 26th. Of course, that could always change, but at this point, that's kind of what the thought is.
All right, thanks for the phone call, Candy, there in Coker. Let's go to Moundville and talk with Dale. Dale, you're next up on TITV.
Hey, Rodney, Gary, how y'all doing?
Doing well, Dale.
I just wondered, well, first of all, I'd like to say I thank y'all for showing the Alabama basketball team. I really got high expectations. I think they'll have a good season. But I'm wondering about defensive linemen. If I'm not mistaken, we only have one defensive lineman, eight Kyle
Byers,
is that his name?
Yeah. All right, Dale. Yeah, we'll get to it. Rodney, defensive line recruiting is a concern for a lot of Bama fans right now. He's right. Byers is the only D-line commitment in 2017 class.
Yeah, they're still recruiting a lot of them, though, and I think they've got a great chance to get their share. I mean, you've talked about Akil Byers. I think he's got a chance to be a great player out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. LeBrian Ray out of here in the state of Alabama, who may be the #1 player in the state. You look around, they're recruiting guys like Elijah Conliffe out of Virginia, Fadarian Mathis out of the state of Louisiana, Aubrey Solomon out of Georgia. Javon Kinlaw is a tremendous defensive line prospect that's a JUCO player. So they're in on a lot of guys. I think they're going to get their share. They have to, Gary. They really have to. This is a must. Top priority is for Alabama to, restock that defensive line.
All right, let's get to an email from Kyle. Which player is more valuable to Alabama, Jonathan Allen or Jalen Hurts? Do we have to pick? They're both crucial. I mean, I think Jonathan Allen may be as fine a football player as there is in the country, regardless of position.
Yeah.
But Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, and we know, when a quarterback goes down, it can change the whole situation with your team. I don't really want to pick. They're both very valuable guys.
You can't pick, I don't think. I think, obviously both of them are tremendous assets on their sides of the ball, and, you talk about Allen's the leader on that side, and, Jalen Hurts, even as a true freshman, is, he's extremely important as a leader on that side. So
keep your fingers crossed that they both stay healthy.
Exactly.
How about that? All right, still to come. Derrick Henry's best game as a pro. Check out the Heisman winner's first NFL touchdown. We'll have it. Plus, Rodney and I make our game picks for LSU. You're watching Tighter Insider TV. We'll be right back after the break. Former Bama running back Derrick Henry received his biggest NFL workload this past Thursday night, and the Heisman winner delivered in a 36-22 win over Jacksonville. He had 16 carries and 4 receptions for 97 total yards and his first NFL touchdown. Henry and the Titans are on the road at San Diego this Sunday. Well, Rodney, it's time for our game picks. Alabama at LSU, Saturday night, Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. Who you got?
Well, I tell you, Alabama's had a lot of success down in Baton Rouge, and hopefully they'll do it again. You know, when I look at this game, I look at LSU, they're going to be sky high. I know that's kind of the MO of Ed Orgeron. I think enthusiasm, excitement, all of that stuff, but really that only lasts so long. I like the way Alabama approaches these kinds of games, always very businesslike. I think if they don't turn the ball over, if they protect the ball, I think they can run the ball on LSU. I really hope that they continue to develop that passing game. If they do those things and don't really give LSU anything, Gary, I think LSU's going to have a hard time. Now, I'll say this, too. There you see my pick. You don't want to give up those chunk plays to Leonard Fournette. He ran for 284 against Ole Miss. 211 of those were on 3 carries. So you can't give up the chunk plays. Alabama doesn't generally do that.
Well, Rodney, I'll tell you this. The last few times Alabama's been down there. In fact, Nick Saban's 3-1 in Baton Rouge against LSU. But it took overtime in 2008. They lost there in 2010. Down to the wire in 2012, 2014. That scares me. But I remember last year, even though it was in Tuscaloosa, LSU rolled in here 7-0. Fournette was the Heisman favorite still at that point until Henry just went crazy in that game, and Fournette had 19 carries, 31 yards. Alabama's a better football team. I'm impressed with what LSU's doing, but Alabama is the best team in the country. And they'll survive another test. It won't be easy, but Alabama will take down the Tigers 27-16 on Saturday night in Baton Rouge. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. As always, our beautiful shirts and ties are provided by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original Elephant Wear. Check them out in person, or you can shop online as well. Simply go to their website, locker-room.biz, get outfitted in this great elephant wear or any of their other great men's and ladies' wear. That's the Locker Room, a Tuscaloosa tradition since 1964. If you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch it again at 10:30, our replay right after the news at 10, or you can find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching Tider Insider TV. Have a great night, everyone.